For this faculty development talk, I'd like to talk to you about distinguishing between communication skills and styles and how that distinction is important for giving feedback on better communication. We'll be covering the following clinician educator competencies: teaching and facilitating learning, learner assessment, and feedback. So to begin, the ACGME sets a core competency for all trainees regarding interpersonal and communication skills, which they break down into 3 sub-competencies surrounding patient and family-centered communication, interprofessional and team communication, and communication within healthcare systems. And so, how do we distinguish between style and skill? Communication style is something that can be thought of as personality-driven, innate tendencies. Just as a brief example, someone's style of being more formal versus casual, or perhaps more reserved versus expressive. Whereas communication skills are learnable and teachable techniques. And so I tend to think about core communication skills for trainees falling into 4 major buckets. The first of which is structuring a conversation, skills in eliciting patient or family perspectives, in conveying empathy and rapport building, or in summarizing and closing. And so, the first step is diagnosing the learner. Now, there are some phenotypes that I'll just give as examples, but it's important to conceptualize them into major categories. For example, is the learner an over-explainer? Do they tend to be long-winded or use a lot of medical jargon? Do they tend to be the task-oriented communicator? That is, they're very focused on giving medical updates and efficiency, but perhaps struggle with rapport building. Are they the fixer, where when a patient expresses an emotion, they jump to problem solving instead of addressing those emotions? Or perhaps they're an uncertain communicator, where their communication appears unsure or lacks confidence. Again, these are just some examples of phenotypes. So now that we've talked about some phenotypes and the 4 major types of communication skills, I'm going to give you some examples on how to recognize issues within these buckets and to give feedback. And with each example, it's going to be in the structure of an observed behavior, a proposed statement that you might model for the learner, and then a reason that you can tell the learner on why this particular skill is important. So the first, if there's a problem in structuring a conversation, you may observe that a learner jumps straight into updates without asking the patient's priorities and setting an agenda. So you may say to them, perhaps you could try the following phrase: before I update you, what's on your mind today? The reason why this is an effective communication skill in structuring is that it keeps the interaction more patient-centered. Perhaps you might notice that a learner struggles with eliciting patient or family perspectives. You observe them giving a long, jargon-heavy explanation and not checking in for understanding. So, a phrase that you could teach the learner would be trying, how does that sound to you? And the reason why this is effective is that it helps to ensure clarity in the patient perspective. Perhaps they struggle with empathy or rapport building, and so you might observe that they move straight past patient distress too quickly, and so you might remind them, it's important to pause and acknowledge. You could try a phrase, for example, of, I can see this is really weighing on you. And the reason why this is an effective communication skill is that naming emotion strengthens connections. Perhaps they struggle with summarizing or closing the conversation. You may observe that there's no wrap-up after a very long discussion. And so a feedback that you might give is, you could try the phrase, to recap, we talked about X, Y, or Z thing. Does that sound right? This is helpful because it improves retention and provides a concrete ending to conversation. And so again, in summary, communication skills are learnable, teachable techniques, and they can fall into 4 general categories. That is, skills surrounding structuring a conversation, eliciting patient-family perspectives, conveying empathy or rapport building, or summarizing and closing. If you can identify which of these buckets your learner is struggling with, you can then tailor feedback based on these particular communication skills. These are my references, and thank you for your time.